All right. Welcome to Tokyo Philosophy Project. Um, Today's guest is Professor Iddo Landau. He is a professor at Haifa University, Israel, and he has published a lot of papers on meaning of life and other philosophical issues. In 2017, he published a book entitled Finding Meaning in an Imperfect World, this book, and with Oxford University Press. And I want to strongly recommend this book for all students and scholars who have an interest in this issue. And this book covers a wide range of topics in the field of philosophy of meaning of life. And this is a very good introductory book for understanding this field. And I also love your attitude of always going the middle way. I think this is a refreshing way of thinking about the topics of life's meaning. So, and I think this is a very promising approach to the problems of meaning of life. And my first question is about your perfectionism and your criticism of perfectionism and your argument on non-competitive value. And you argue in your book that perfectionism is not a good approach to the issues of meaning in life. But the perfectionism is this kind of thinking. For example, if our city is not the best, is not the most beautiful of the world, it is disgustingly ugly. So this kind of very, very extreme idea, but this kind of idea sometimes happens in the discussion of philosophy of meaning of life. And so you criticize this kind of thinking. And if we apply this kind of thinking on the philosophy of meaning of life, for example, the idea like, if my life is not perfect, life has no meaning. For example, David Bennett's anti-natalism have this kinds of inclination. For example, he argued that if there is a very small amount of pain in our life, then coming into existence is always worse than not coming into existence. So this kind of thinking is a very good example of your perfectionism. So first, I would like to ask you, why do you begin to think about the perfectionism as one of the most important topics in the field of philosophy of life's meaning?
Yeah, thank you very much for the extremely generous and kind introduction, and also for inviting me to the podcast. I'm extremely happy to be here. And also thank you for this question. In my experience, indeed, many people, both scholars and laypersons, who take their lives to be meaningless or insufficiently meaningful, unnecessarily, in my view, because I think that many times their lives are meaningful, do adopt the perfectionist attitude. So you mentioned Professor Benatar, and I think that it is also true of many other writers. For example, in Albert Camus' book, The Myth of Sisyphus, he says that life is absurd, and one of the reasons for, in his view, of life's absurdity is that we don't know everything about everything. And I think this puts the threshold or the standards too high. In many traditions, only God can know everything about everything. So this says that only God can have a meaningful life. And I think that many people who don't know everything about everything, but know a few things about some things, can have a meaningful life. That's already a lot. Just as in the example you presented, our city can be a beautiful city, even if it's not the most beautiful city in the world, or we perhaps are not extremely poor, even if we're not multimilliardaires. Maybe they have more money, or surely they have more money, but we can be, okay, sufficiently comfortable, perhaps. So what I met in many philosophical discussions or many philosophical arguments against the meaningfulness of life. You also mentioned David Benatar and also others. For example, the argument from our cosmic insignificance, because we cannot influence all the cosmos, all the different galaxies, our lives are not meaningful. Maybe it's not necessary. Maybe it's enough to have some good impact on our immediate surroundings, our profession, our friends, people near us. I also met it when laypersons came to talk with me. For example, there was a lady who told me that she thinks her life is meaningless. She was a biologist, she is a biologist, and a very good one, but because she was not the cutting edge of her profession, she wasn't a Nobel Prize biologist, she was just a very good biologist, she thought her life is meaningless. And I think it's really a pity to ignore the great value that is all around us, to fail to notice it, to have it as so to say transparent to us, just because it is not absolute.
Thank you. Hearing your comment, I sometimes think that some people start to be inclined to the idea of perfectionism when we think the existence of ourselves. Our existence is very, very, very small when we compare it to the whole universe, or I don't know, the whole history of the universe, or the vast large universe. So compared with those kind of very, very big thing, we have to think ourselves to be very, very small and very valueless existence. And I think Blaise Pascal says the similar thing in his Pensée, compared with the vast amount of the universe, the human existence is a very small thing. So, so I think the reason why we are attracted to the idea of perfectionism is maybe this kind of a comparison between ourselves and the universe, or God, or the whole history of the universe, and such very big stuff. So what do you think is behind our inclination to be attracted to those comparison, or attracted to the idea of perfectionism? Do you have any innate reason for our existence, or whether there is some biological cause for us to think about this kind of futile comparison. And do you have any idea about this?
Well, I think that it is interesting that when we compare ourselves, we usually tend to compare ourselves to what is much bigger than us. We could have also, in principle, compared ourselves to what is much smaller than us. I mean, we're very tiny in comparison to the cosmos, but we're very big in comparison to, for example, an atom or a neutron, or I'm not sure what are the parts of the atom. And we might be very ignorant in comparison to God, if there is a God, but we are extremely intelligent in comparison to the intelligence of a virus or a worm. And for some reason, we compare ourselves only to one direction. I think that it might have to do in some people with a lot of ambition, maybe unbridled ambitions, too much ambition or ambitiousness. And also, I think that many people are much more sensitive to what they do not have, and they are not as sensitive to what they already do have. So for some reason, both ambitiousness and perhaps a biological tendency to be more aware of what is still missing or what is dangerous or what is wrong, many people, unfortunately, tend to focus much more on the difference between themselves and what is perfect, and I think this is unfortunate. Yes.
I see. Okay, and you also write in your book that do not be cruel to yourself. So, yeah, I think this is a very important advice for many of us, and also. Yeah, I was very impressed with your, this advice. And please tell me, why do you stress this?
When I talked with people, many people came to talk with me about the meaning, or actually the lack of meaning or insufficient meaning of their lives. And it struck me that if they were talking, if they were saying what they said about themselves, about other people, then both they and everyone else who would have heard it would have said, wow, this is so cruel. I mean, they said things such as, well, because I'm not as great a philosopher as Aristotle, I'm nothing. I'm a zero. Or I mentioned this biologist. And I think that many things that we tell ourselves, not even in voice, not loudly, many thoughts that we have about ourselves, if we dared to say them to another person, this person would have stopped being our friend long ago. And if another person told us what we're saying, many of us, certainly sometimes I myself, are saying ourselves, when we hear about cruel people, we loathe them. We think it is a very, very bad thing to do or to be cruel. However, we forget that we too are people, we too are persons. And just as it is wrong to be cruel to another person, it is also wrong to be cruel to oneself. And I think that saying to someone with a perfectionist attitude, look, because you're not Aristotle, you're a zero, you're a bad philosopher, shame on you. I think this this is cruelty. And it's very important for us, I think, to try to be sensitive to our cruelty when we're cruel and try to diminish it. I think that many people who feel that their lives are not meaningful enough are cruel to themselves, and they should try as much as they can to avoid it.
Okay, thank you. And you also distinguish non-competitive value from competitive value. This is also very interesting for me. You say running for the gold medal is competitive. And of course, this is a good thing. Whereas jogging for fun in the park is non-competitive. So, and you argue that we should reevaluate the importance of non-competitive value in life's meaning. And yes, this part is, again, very persuasive for me and very interesting. And so tell me more about the importance of non-competitive value in philosophy of life's meaning and the reason why you wanted to stress the importance of non-competitive value.
Right. So maybe I'll give a small imaginary example that might sharpen the distinction between competitive and non-competitive value. I've been teaching philosophy for many years now, so I have some proficiency in philosophy. And if I'll walk in the street of my town, to stroll around, I might say to myself, probably secretly, that, wow, I probably know more philosophy than any other person who now walks in the street. Maybe more than all people who walk now in the street. Maybe if there would be another person from my department, no, but otherwise, yes. Now, let's say, as a thought experiment, that God made everyone in the street or everyone in the town know as much philosophy as I do. So now I cannot say this to myself anymore. The degree to which I will value philosophy or like philosophy less will be the degree to which philosophy has been for me of competitive value. I mean, it helped me to be able to say to myself secretly, ha, I'm so much better than others. Right, and the degree to which I will feel now that I value philosophy less is the competitive value that philosophy had for me, and the degree to which I will continue as I do now enjoy philosophy and find it interesting and valuable, even after everyone knows more or as much as I do, will be the value of philosophy for me, which is non-competitive value. Now, I think that competitive value is also good, but I think that many of us, in the lives of many of us, there is not good balance between competitive value and non-competitive value. We emphasize too much competitive value and insufficiently non-competitive value. And I think there are some disadvantages to competitive value. One advantage is, of course, that not everyone can have competitive value. I mean, in a competition, some people win and some people lose. Not everyone can have the competitive value we are competing for, whereas in non-competitive value, well, more people can enjoy it. And also when there is competitive value, well, there are tensions, there are fears, there are frustrations, there is losing and feeling maybe that life is meaningless because of that. Sometimes it even breeds hostility and sometimes even, in some cases, cheating or hypocrisy. So there are many disadvantages. And non-competitive value is much more available, and it allows people to enjoy things more readily. There is an American philosopher who came to some of the conferences you organized, Tirzel, and he has this great example of a runner in, I don't know, the Olympics or another competition. And he says, look, in the minute that the runner knows that he or she won't get the gold or silver or bronze medals, there's no point in running. I mean, he has to continue to run because you don't stop in the middle, but running is pointless, it's futile, it's meaningless. So there's no reason to continue to do that. And that is a problem in competitive running and also in competitive value. So one way of thinking about what I'm suggesting is to move from the competitive Olympics or race to running in the park and enjoying what running can give, non-competitive running. It gives a good feeling in the body, and so the park may be beautiful and it gives a nice health for the whole day and things like that. So I'm a bit suspicious of competitive value, and I think it should be balanced a bit better.
Okay, thank you. My next question is has a close relationship with the comment you just made. So you argue that so many ordinary things in our everyday lives are already valuable and meaningful. And you write, quote, most people already have a great deal that is valuable or meaningful in their lives. Nevertheless, many people do not appreciate it, unquote. And so our everyday lives are full of values and meanings, but we do not realize it. So in this sense, we don't necessarily have to be like great persons, such as Mother Teresa and Einstein, in order to acquire meaning of life. And in most cases, our lives are already meaningful. And yeah, yes, I too think like this. So is this what you want to stress? Is this correct?
Yes, this is my view. I think that many people's lives are already meaningful and they just don't know it or deny to themselves.
Yeah, and in your book from page 240 to page 244 is the most beautiful part of your book. And I quote from page 242, quote, if we focus and open up enough, we can see and enjoy the great beauty of even simple things, such as somewhat concave lines of the chair, the folds on the bedspread, the way the leaf on the plant near the window quivers and then stops, just standing out from the stem without movement, unquote. Yeah, this is what I think this is very beautiful, and I was moved. And you also recommend us to see around our everyday world as a work of art in the museum. So our everyday lives are full of beauty and meaningfulness. And so I can fully understand what you mean. Then my question is, and here you seem to identify meaningfulness and beauty. So I think that you believe there is some identification between meaningfulness and beauty, but I think this identification might not be always correct, because even an ugly life events or ugly objects can have meaningfulness in some context or in some cases. So yeah, so your identification or your discussion and connecting on meaningfulness and beauty is very impressive and persuasive. But these questions came up to my mind when I first read this part of your book. If you have any comment or suggestions, please tell me.
I think that your comment showed me, I returned, I think that I wasn't clear enough in the book, and I should clarify it better. Because I think that when the book is read, it does suggest, or it does suggest that I identify beauty and meaning. And I should have clarified, or I should have written it better, so it would be clear that I would like to say that beauty is perhaps a metaphor of meaning. So just as we can see, and that I think was perhaps not clear enough, unfortunately, in the way I wrote it. So just as we can see beauty in many things, we can see meaning in many things. And some of the things that we can see meaning in are not beautiful things, but still they have meaning, they have value. The value is not an aesthetic value, it's not a value of beauty, but it is another value, perhaps of morality, perhaps of interest, perhaps of knowledge, and other types of value. And I think that it would have been better if I would have made a clear distinction between identification and a metaphor. Because I do think that we can see meaningfulness also in non-beautiful things, and we should also see meaningfulness in non-beautiful things as well.
Thank you very much. So I'm very looking forward to your future discussion on the distinction between meaningfulness and beauty and their inner relationships between these two concepts. Okay. My next question is concerning trauma and meaning and affirmations. In my presentation I gave at International Conference on Philosophy and Meaning in Life held January this year, and I argued that it is very hard for a person who has experienced a traumatic event to say yes to that person's having born to that particular harsh life. And you also refer to trauma and life's meaning in your book on page 172. And you write that in your childhood, there were many Holocaust survivors in Jerusalem. And you write, quote, I remember being impressed as a teenager by the ability some of them had. Even some of those had lost their families and gone through very traumatic experiences to lead meaningful and sometimes even happy lives, unquote. And this is also a very impressive part of your book. But however, I suppose that even those survivors who succeeded in leading meaningful and happy lives after the Holocaust probably cannot easily say yes to their having born into a life which Holocaust was inevitably to occur. Yeah, so of course, I don't have a clear answer to this point, but I feel that finding meaning in life and finding happiness in one's life are somewhat different from affirming having born into this kind of desperate, harsh, or devastating things happened. That kind of lives. So, so in this sense, the meaningfulness of life and the affirmation of having been born to that life seem to be different. So I'd be happy if you could have any idea concerning this point. Of course, I know this is a very, very difficult question to answer, but if you have any.
Yes, I think it is very difficult. I'm not sure what the answer would be. I think that maybe more work needs to be done about that. When I met those Holocaust survivors, I did not ask them this question, and now they're not here for me to ask them. But to me, I must say it makes sense, and my intuition is that you're right. So I think I would agree that it is possible for a person to say that they are sorry that they were born to such difficult and sometimes torturous in some ways lives. However, once they are there, they are going to try to make it as meaningful as they can, or to increase as much as they can the degree of happiness. And maybe all in all, it is sufficient to say that it is a meaningful life and to an extent happy life, and still at the same time say that they're sorry that they were put into that kind of life. To me, it makes a lot of sense, and I think that just as you say, and you've already indeed in your lecture and you in your work, I think made a lot of progress in this direction. But there is more to think about that and to suggest here distinctions and how we should manage these different concepts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hearing your comment, I just start to think that, it may be that the affirmation of having been born, acquiring the affirmation of having been born is would require us to higher bar, the more harder for us to attain the affirmation of having been born than acquiring happiness or a meaningful life. So then if we rigorously pursue the perfect affirmation of having been born, then we might be trapped by the perfectionism you have been arguing. Yeah, so this might, this might be a kind of a trap for me or for us when we pursue the affirmation of whole life and the whole having been born itself. Okay, this will be a big problem for me too. Okay, thank you. Yeah, my next question is eternal life. And in your book, you say that if you have a pill that makes you live eternally, you would take that pill. And when I first read this part, I was very surprised that because I had expected that you would say the opposite. but also this is interesting because for me, I wish, of course, I wish to live long and longevity, and as much as long as possible. But at the same time, I do not necessarily want to take that pill because if I take that pill, I will have to live forever, and this will probably will become gradually a burden for me and for myself, because what if we live for 5,000 years, 10,000 years? I think it'll. I don't know, but probably a big psychological burden will be a very big pressure for me. And yeah, so yeah, this is just my guess, but I suppose probably I will have a lot of big problem for living for such a long period of time. Um, what do you think? Well, when you wrote this part, you take this pill, do you actually imagine that you live for more than 10,000 years on the earth?
Yes. First, I must say that I asked many people whether they would take the pill, and you're in the majority. I'm in the minority. Most people would not take the pill. Maybe a pill of 20 more years, maybe 40 more years. Even that is not always the case, but not that kind of an eternity pill. So I'm in the minority, and I think that it is very difficult indeed to extrapolate or present some kind of an induction from our own lives to a very long life of 5,000 or 10,000 years, or maybe 100,000 years or more. I mean, eternity is even much more than that. So it's hard to judge, but as far as I can see or think about it, and I'm certainly not certain in my reply, in my affirmative reply, but as far as I can think or imagine such a life, I assume that I will not become, older and frail and maybe cognitively impaired. So I'm not talking, of course, about a life of senile back pains in an old person's home, but more or less as I'm now for a long time. I think that what I enjoy now, maybe I could continue to enjoy. And what interests me now maybe would continue to interest me, or at least things would continue to interest me. So maybe after some time, I will be maybe less interested in, I don't know, maybe literature, but more interested maybe in visual arts or things like that. And even if not, I will continue to be interested in literature. Maybe more books will come out, and I can see how even if some things will repeat themselves, they would still be meaningful, because some books are meaningful even if you read them again. Of course, not week after week after week, but every 5 years or every 10 years. And some, for example, musical pieces, it's the same musical piece, and you enjoy it maybe in a deep, meaningful way, not completely different from the way you enjoyed it in the last time, maybe a few weeks or months ago, but still it is meaningful. And some relationships or feelings of personal warmth it's not different every time, but it is very pleasant or meaningful or deep every time. So I hope that it would be meaningful, and I would go for the pill. It is problematic if it is irreversible. Then I might be stuck, as you say, in great burdens. On the other hand, if I don't take the pill, that is also irreversible. I mean, I will die, and so both things are problematic in that way. The ideal would be that I'll be able to take a pill and live to the point in which I will want to stop to live.
Uh-huh.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe that may be the best alternative for us to in the future. Okay, this is my last question or comment. You in the last chapter of your book, you provided 5 practical guidelines for meaningful life. And the first is avoid perfectionism. And the second is do not discriminate against yourself. And the third is this is not a dress rehearsal. This is very interesting and very important. And the fourth is do not be cruel to yourself. We have already discussed. And the fifth is work. And when I read the fifth guideline, work, and I come up with the idea that, oh, in Japan, I have to add the number five guideline. They do not overwork. So in Japan, we have to say work, but do not overwork, because Japan is infamous for karoshi, that is death from overwork.
Wow.
So sometimes companies force their employees to overwork until they die. So I think this is crazy and must be stopped. But this problem is culturally, existing very deeper level of our Japanese culture. So this is a really big problem we must challenge. So I don't know, the same, you can find same things in your country, Israel or any other countries, but do you have any comment?
Yes, my comment is that I deeply agree with what you say. I think that it is very important not to overwork, and it is easy to overwork, no less than it is easy to underwork or not to do enough. And again, as you mentioned in the beginning of our talk today, it is very good to go in the moderate way, not too much. And yes, when I wrote it, I mostly thought of people who do not work enough on their meaning of their lives. But I think one can easily work too much and in that also spoil life's meaning. So I wholeheartedly accept this addition or correction.
Okay. So I think we have run out of our time. So yeah, thank you very much for joining on Tokyo Philosophy Project today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I enjoyed the talk and I also learned from it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.